All right, next. Matt L. 920, with the Democrats holding a strong majority, it would seem on the surface it would be ideal time to exert its power and enact the kind of forward-thinking, progressive legislation that's been possible in the previous administration. We've seen a vocal minority of Democrats, such as yourself, thank you, push for this and have made some small strides. Real change is imposed as much by the Democrats as anybody else. What are the reasons behind this? To what extent is an honest difference of opinion, entrenched business interest lobbyists, re-election fears, and any other factor? Very intelligent question in that last line. First of all, it's not true that change has been imposed as much by the Democrats as anybody else. The Democrats have been much better than the Republicans. I do not say that we've done everything right, but in everything we've done, we have been much better. And, in politics, that's relevant. People run, and the Democrats, as I said, have been much more supportive than the Republicans. So it's not correct to say it's been imposed as much by Democrats as anybody else. And I know people say, well, why is that the standard? I'm only quoting and responding to this. Actually, I will tell you, given politics, given the need to try to do things, I am influenced to a great extent by the rule of, or the wisdom, I don't know, was it a cone or whatever it was, of a 20th century philosopher named Henny Youngman. He was actually a great comedian. And one of his great lines was, how's your wife? Compared to what? I mean, that's compared to what is unfortunately often our decision. Secondly, it's not a vocal minority of Democrats. I mean, a majority of Democrats would be doing things that Matt L. wanted. We don't have enough in the Senate. If it was only the House, we'd win all. Well, not all of them. I've had to make some compromises in the financial regulatory stuff to community bankers. So let me answer why. It says, to what extent do you attribute it to an honest difference of opinion, entrenched business interests, re-election fears? It is to a great extent re-election fears. Here's the issue. We have 60 Democrats. Many of them, a great majority, are people who are liberals and are able to act on that. A number of Democrats, 7 or 8 or so, were elected from states that not only went for John McCain, but went strongly for John McCain. There were two Democratic senators from Arkansas. Arkansas had been Democratic, but it's been moving in a very conservative direction. It's interesting. It's a southern state with a very small African-American population. An African-American population is in a southern state a base for more progressive activity. The two senators from Arkansas, two Democrats, two very good people, represent a state that went for John McCain, I think, by about 20 points. Well, that's part of the problem. There are people on the committee that I chair who represent districts that went for John McCain by 15, 20, and 30 points. That's the problem. So the answer is re-election fears. Some of it is honest difference of opinion. I will say this. I've worked with a lot of these Democrats. Many of them are Democrats as opposed to Republicans out of philosophy, but they do have re-election. And, I think those of us on the left can't be inconsistent. We've had a situation where I go back to the Vietnam War days in my own political career. I wasn't in the Congress then. I was working for a mayor. But from time to time, we say, and marijuana is an example, we say to politicians, how dare you oppose public opinion? Public opinion says one thing, gun control. The majority wants gun control. Why don't you vote for it? On the other hand, we are sometimes critical of politicians because they are following public opinion. We say to them, well, what's the matter? Don't you have the courage to stand up for your own belief? I mean, it can't be that it's right for them to defy public opinion sometimes and that they have to go along with it other times. You might just say, look, it depends on the issue, and that's the honest answer. But the response to Matt L. is that there are Democrats elected from conservative districts, and it is re-election fears that I think are the major constraint. Janelle, Mr. Frank, what is your advice for those of us who like to have a government free of lobbyists and the corruption they cause? Isn't it possible to be a lawmaker and still do your own research without having the money people purchase law that do citizens harm instead of good? Well, two things. First, we have a problem because of campaign contributions, and it's a special American problem. I was in France when François Mitterrand was re-elected, and it was the Sunday of election day, and there were not even sound trucks allowed. Under French law, for a few days before the election, everybody shuts up. And advertisements are carefully limited. They are in England. The United States Supreme Court, which has been pretty much conservative dominated, which is an accident of who dies when, but the Supreme Court has been pretty much under conservatives since Richard Nixon got to make those appointments. Ironically, when as a result of Watergate, Congress passed very good laws to limit campaign spending. I wasn't here. I'm claiming credit for these myself. This is in the 70s. The U.S. Supreme Court struck them down as unconstitutional. First time in American history that was held. We'd had campaign restrictions. But the Supreme Court said in the case, if people want to look it up, is Buckley versus Valeo, V-A-L-E-O. Valeo was the Secretary of the Senate. It's in 74 or 75. It said that your right to spend money in a campaign as a candidate, or even as a non-candidate, to influence votes, to buy TV ads, etc., is a First Amendment right and can't be limited. So we have a problem in trying to limit campaign spending. So America has more campaign money than anywhere else. Secondly, isn't it possible to do your own research? I have a good staff that does my own research, although it's interesting, there's a paradox here. If we hire too many people and pay them a decent salary, we're accused of padding the public payroll. I got to tell you, the greatest bargain the people of the United States get are the men and women who work here at much less than they could probably earn in the private sector, who are dedicated and smart. My life would be impossible without them. But even they can't know it in their own heads. We have a whole range of issues. So there's nothing the matter with talking to lobbyists. By the way, what I generally talk to are not the lobbyists, but I say to the lobbyists, bring in the people who do this. I want that information. So yes, it's possible to do good legislation without this. The problem is, because the United States Supreme Court, people have to raise more campaign money in America than in any other democracy in the world. And the conservatives say, oh, if you restrict campaign spending, then you're not a democracy. Well, then France isn't a democracy, and Italy isn't, and England isn't, and Australia isn't, and Israel isn't, and all these very democratic countries aren't. So that's our problem. Next, from Mid-Kid, why did you accept a special loan from Countrywide, i.e. Friends of Angelo? Do you consider that corruption or a privilege of being in power? C, none of the above. I didn't accept a special loan from the Friends of Angelo. He's got me confused with some other people. Let me be very clear here. I never accepted a special loan from Countrywide. I never got a general loan from Countrywide. I never got anything from Countrywide. Maybe they might have sent me a letter. I got an envelope. But this is just wrong. I never accepted a special loan. And the last time I got a mortgage here in Washington, the realtor arranged it. I couldn't even tell you who it was from. Partly because they buy and sell it. So, no, I've never gotten a special loan from anybody, and I've never done business with Countrywide. 9, Rebel. If the Supreme Court overturns campaign financing laws, as it may well do soon on First Amendment grounds, how would you respond and how quickly? What do you think the rest of Congress will do? Would you consider another legal vehicle for corporations to operate within and eliminate corporate personhood? The answer is really here what I just said. If the Supreme Court strikes something on constitutional grounds, the only thing we can do is get a constitutional amendment, which would be impossible. 2/3 of the Congress, 3/4 of the states. So the question really, I guess I anticipated this question with my last answer. There really isn't anything we can do. Now it says, can you eliminate the legal status of corporations? First of all, given the Supreme Court, I don't think that would solve the problem. And I think corporations are a useful form, limited liability, so I would be reluctant to do that, particularly, though, because even if you said the corporation didn't have personhood, the Supreme Court would still allow the corporate forms to spend the money. We either have to amend the Constitution or hope that President Obama and successors appoint enough justices who disagree with this very eccentric notion that the right to spend unlimited amounts of money on an election is somehow an essential part of electoral freedom. Again, no other country in the world thinks that. Until we get rid of that, I don't think there's anything we can do. 10, M. Knight